Hello there, hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Sunday, January the 19th, a few minutes past 3:30 Rio de Janeiro time, and I'm happy to be with you. Let's get started. It looks like we have a first participation here from Shauri Shrivastava. Hi Shauri, welcome to the channel. I believe it is your first time here, and it's a pleasure to have one more participant. Shauri is asking, please tell a little about permanent residency, through stable civil union. How is different from marriage? Do you also assist with this visa type? Yeah, Shauri. So like from most features, the stable civil union route is pretty much just like the marriage. Okay, so the difference here is that you're gonna prove that you are in a civil union, and the Brazilian immigration, they may be a little bit more demanding in terms of making sure there is a legitimate relationship. There is a legitimate relationship between the applicant and the Brazilian national. Okay, but once this challenge is overcome, you're gonna get pretty much what a foreign citizen married to a Brazilian would have. Okay, and maybe, and yes, of course, we do have many applicants. For some reason, the actually married foreign citizens represent the vast majority of our clients. But yes, we do have every now and then we do have like applicants who are in a civil union. And for those of you who don't know exactly what a civil union is, it means like people who are living together as a couple, like they're sharing expenses, they are developing their lives together, but they are not in a formal marriage, right? Like, I mean, they're still performing as married couples, but without a formal marriage. And one of the reasons why we see that happening in Brazil is just because of the level of red tape and bureaucracy. Sometimes it's difficult for instance, to gather all the documents that like a Brazilian registry expects from applicants, and then eventually they kind of give up and say, listen, this is absolutely nonsense. I'm just gonna start living together, and we figure this out later down the road. One way, Shari, that you can overcome like this kind of challenge of proving that you are actually in a civil union is for you to go to a registry in Brazil and formalize the civil union, right? Like in Portuguese we call união estável, which is kind of stable union, right? That's how you addressed in your question, is stable civil union. So the união estável or stable union, as per the Brazilian technical name, you could basically go to a registry, and you go to the registry known as cartório de notas, and this specific registry, they are going to draft paperwork. Usually you don't need to hire an attorney, you just go to the registry. They charge a fee, of course, to review the paperwork, to prepare the escritura, or the contract of civil union, collect the documents, and right there you could have this document drafted. And once the document is drafted and accepted by both applicants, you are in a formal civil union, right? Just a heads up, some people, they say, you know what, I don't want to marry, because if I marry, I'm gonna have I'm gonna have lots of obligations as a married person in Brazil. If I divorce, maybe my then for a former spouse is going to ask for support and this and that. But nowadays the civil union is pretty much the same thing as a marriage, right? So not only with the benefits such as getting the permanent residency in Brazil, but also the obligations that would come along with marriage. So just making sure everyone understands this, that if you get into a civil union, you are assuming pretty much all the obligations that would come with a traditional marriage, if you will. I want to ask you guys if everyone is can hear my voice well. It looks like for some reason my Rode mic is not active, so it looks like the sound is coming from my camera, which is of course like not as good from a sound perspective as a professional mic. So if you could just let me know if you can hear me well, I would appreciate. I see we have several viewers as we speak, so let me know if you have any topics of your interest. As a participant here in our live stream, you have a priority to pick subjects and topics of your interest. Right, Cherie is confirming. Marcia, welcome, Marcia. Marcia says we can hear you. Glad to know. We have a blue heart and says yes. Ronnie Dio, good to see you here, Ronnie. Ronnie is always supporting our channel. So good to see you over here, Ronnie. And good to know that the sound is working and you guys can hear me and understand. All right, so just sharing here a few of the topics we've been discussing recently, particularly about the retirement visa route. The retirement visa route has become much more interesting than it was in the past. Currently, the retirement route, right? We say route because it could be a visa if issued abroad, or it could be a residency if issued directly in Brazil. And the retirement route now is getting you access to the permanent residency, right? And that's something very exclusive. You don't find that in the digital nomad path, for instance, right? Like you could be in the digital nomad route and you're not going to get access ever to the permanent residency. But now the Brazilian retirement route is going to allow applicants after just 4 years to apply for the permanent residency. And once you become a permanent resident, you could potentially, after 4 years, right? That's the second 4 years, so first 4 years for you to achieve the permanent residency. And once you achieve the permanent residency, in theory, you can apply for citizenship, right? After 4 years as a permanent resident. Don't forget, you need to speak, write, and understand an advanced level of Portuguese. But how I like to say, like if you are living full time in Brazil, it's very difficult for you not to learn the Portuguese language. The Brazilian society is very different than other societies you're gonna see. Particularly in cities like Rio de Janeiro, for instance, you're gonna get in a mode of interacting with several people on a daily basis. And that makes learning the language so much easier. All right, and of course you can also rely on like a language school, or like a private tutor. There are many routes for you to achieve like the level of fluency required for you to apply for the citizenship. All right, Marcia says, I'm here with my husband Todd. We have questions about rental income taxes. We have enjoyed your videos and would appreciate your help. Of course, Marcia. So, like in a nutshell, as a non-resident, right? Like, and then this is gonna apply either to a foreign citizen or a Brazilian who's no longer living in Brazil, right? And then like in terms of taxation, how you declare, that you live in the country through the saída. Declaração de saída fiscal, or the tax exit, right? Like that's beyond the scope of our live stream. But the point is, like for a Brazilian, after the Brazilian leaves Brazil through the proper filings, a Brazilian is going to be just like a foreign citizen from a taxation perspective, meaning that the foreign citizen who's not a resident in Brazil, of course, you're gonna have a special type of tax bracket on the rental income. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be a straight 15%, and this tax should be paid at the source through an withholding type of approach, right? Like meaning, if you're renting a property in Brazil for 10,000 reais, the right approach is that the tenant is going to pay you like 8,500, and the tenant is going to pay on your behalf a tax coupon for 1,500. Okay, and of course, like it's not the tenant's job to figure this thing out, so you will need to hire like an attorney who's familiar with such a taxation for non-residents to prepare the paperwork and send, right, like every month to the tenant, so the tenant is going to pay again the 8,500 to you as the net amount, and the tenant is going to pay this coupon for 1,500, which is basically you paying the taxes at the time you getting the money, and the tenant is paying on your behalf, and of course deducting from the rental of 10,000 reais. All right, Marcia. So that's the approach in a nutshell. Cherie, thanks for the explanation. Have a quick follow-up. You're pretty welcome, Cherie. You mentioned that the obligation for civil union is the same as marriage. Yeah, there you go. Does that mean alimony support applies to both similar? Absolutely, absolutely. And a way, Cherie, for you to understand what I'm saying, because I know it sounds strange, and that's pretty Brazilian, right? Like, I mean, like the justices in our legal system, they like to innovate. They like to, bring novelties to our legal framework. So they create those things that don't make much sense, in my opinion, but they're very proud of it. And people in the legal system, by the way, they also think this is a great thing. Like, oh, we innovate so much, like we are ahead of everyone in terms of innovations. I think those innovations sometimes they don't make much sense, right? Because the civil union, like the concept, in my opinion, it is, to give some protection to people who live like spouses, but have chosen not to go through a regular marriage, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense. Like if you live like a married couple, there should be some obligations to it. Okay, now to say that a civil union is exactly the same thing as marriage is nonsense, in my opinion. All right, but that's what the justices they think, and nowadays they say, the reasoning is like that. Well, the Constitution says that, you cannot discriminate against people just because they don't have the proper paperwork, and therefore we're gonna say that people in a civil union, it's exactly the same as people in a marriage, right? So why would you have two different things if they are the same thing, right? Like it's better to call marriage for everything, but we are in this kind of point in which they behave as the same thing, but they are still slightly different, because again, for a marriage you go through a marriage process. For the civil union, you don't go through a marriage process. But again, from an obligation and rights perspective, nowadays they are pretty much the same thing. So yeah, Cherie, exactly. Alimony support, they are going to apply exactly the same to both cases. All right. Now, of course, like there are many things that are considered by a judge when addressing, alimony and support. So it's not as black and white as it sounds. Of course, the judge would review like the specifics of a certain a case before deciding for support and alimony. Now nowadays, judges they try to not to be so fast to address spousal support. They are going to look into the specifics, and let's say if both partners are working, both partners have income, the judge is going to think twice before making, like one of the partners should pay support to each other. Now, I can tell you, if one of the partners is working out there and the other one is like a stay-at-home type of spouse, chances are pretty good that the judge would address spousal support for the partner who is a stay-at-home spouse. And I think it makes sense, right? Because one is developing one's career while the other is not developing any career whatsoever, is just like working from home on like house chores. And I think it does make sense for some type of support to be granted. But they usually are not going to grant forever. Of course, they're going to say, listen, this spouse needs some, needs to achieve some level of education, so I'm going to address support, for 3 years, right? To basically enable the stay-at-home spouse to go and get some type of degree and then be able to get money in the marketplace. All right, Cherie. Brazil Vibes, welcome Brazil Vibes. Boa tarde, Mr. Oliveira. My name is Telly. All right, Telly, good to see you over here. I had a consultation with you this morning. Yes, I do remember, Telly. So good to see you in such a short time. What is the best way to contact your office to make plans to apply in Brazil for retirement visa? Obrigado. So, Telly, that's a good question. Justin, despite the name, is a she, and she is the one who handles our onboarding for pretty much every case at the firm, right? So you would send her an email and just say, listen, Justin, I want to get started with the process, okay? Now, usually after a consultation, she's gonna send you a follow-up email saying, Telly, how was the consultation? Here is the breakdown for our services to assist you in the application for the Brazil retirement visa. And just let us know when you want to start. Like, she's not going to keep bugging you. She's not going to send another email. She's going to send you a single email. And whenever time is right for you, no rush from our side, you're just going to say, Justin, I want to start. And then once you say that you want to start, she's going to send you a service agreement, and she's going to send you an invoice. Once you take care of those two things, you sign the service agreement, you send it back to us, we send it back to you, and you pay the invoice. That's when we're going to set up a board. We have a system which many people know is Monday.com. It's basically a project management tool. We set up a board for you with all the documents that you need. You may ask questions. You may upload the documents you have. And once you are on board, you can also have like unlimited Zoom calls with the immigration expert in charge of your application, okay? So usually it's not going to be myself in the Zoom call. We're going to have someone from our immigration team. Most of the cases nowadays are handled by Patrick, Victoria, or Atlas. They are the three ones handling visas and residencies of this nature, like either the digital nomad or the retirement one. All right. So not today, because today is a Sunday. We don't have like the team that they don't work actually on Sunday. Brazil's regulation on workforce and labor they are pretty archaic. Like, so it's very difficult for us to have team members working outside of regular business hours. I wish we could have that. But anyhow, like on Monday, meaning tomorrow, Telly, she's gonna send you like the breakdown of the fees, and she's gonna make herself available. Again, whenever you're ready, you just get back to her, and she's gonna help you with the onboarding. All right, Telly, and it was very good to see you today. It was a pleasure. All right. Marcia Lorenzano, thank you very much. You're pretty welcome, Marcia. So good to see you over here. Marcia has a follow-up question. Do you provide tax attorney services or work with someone you trust and recommend? Yes, we do provide some level of tax services here at the firm, Marcia. So if you have specific needs, you can send us an email to info@oliveiralawyers.com. I'm going to write over here so you have the email handy. If you know exactly what you need, you can describe, and we do our best to provide you with a quote. If there is many, if there are many things to be exchanged, then the best approach is for you to schedule a consultation, because then we can interact in a consultation and we can be better positioned to give you an accurate quote. All right, Marcia. Moses, boa tarde. Welcome, Moses. Moses is also always around supporting the channel. Good to see you over here, Moses. Marcia also says it is our understanding that we don't pay taxes to the U.S. government for rental income earned in Brazil. Correct. Listen, Marcia, we are, like we don't handle taxation aspects in the U.S., but I am, again, it's just my opinion. I'm pretty confident you do need to pay taxes on any monies you get, no matter where, because taxation in the United States is global, right? Like, meaning if you're getting income in Brazil, guess what? Uncle Sam wants a tiny bit of your income, and anywhere you get money from, like the U.S. taxation system is recognized worldwide for being, very demanding. And again, it doesn't matter where you are. Yes, you need to report income to Uncle Sam, and you need to pay taxes on it. All right, Marcia. All right, we have a Gary. Gary, welcome, Gary. Good to see you over here. Gary Happener, boa tarde. Dr. Oliveira, boa tarde, Gary. I'm applying for retirement residency in Brazil. How recent do the apostles of my documents and records need to be? Gary, they need to make sense. From the immigration perspective. So for the birth certificate, for instance, like, they don't really care if it is like 5 years old, because the specifics for your birth certificate, they are going to continue to be the same. But for instance, for the background check, for the criminal records, they should not be older than 90 days at the time of filing. Okay, so when you file, when your paperwork goes into the Brazilian immigration system, your background check should not be older than 90 days. And for the financial documents, there is no a firm 90 days kind of a timeline, but the older they are, the less representative of your current situation they will be. Now, again, for some things, for instance, like if you're getting retirement income probably you will not change because it's like, I don't know, 120 days instead of 90 days. But for the bank statements, for instance, maybe the Brazilian immigration may have an issue if they are too old. All right, Gary. There are no. I can tell you. We know like the sources of regulation and rules and laws for Brazilian immigration, and this is not said anywhere, right? So there is no guideline or manual or instructions that we gonna read and see such type of timeline, except for the background check. For the background check, it's one of the few documents that the Brazilian immigration will specifically mention the 90 days. All right, Gary. Gary is also asking, do the translations of all documents and apostles into Portuguese need to be from an authorized translator, or can we do them ourselves? Gary, there is a distinction. It depends on how you are applying. And maybe just to share, I see here we have many other participants, so I'm going to take the opportunity to make a few distinctions. Whenever you are applying for the retirement residency, you have different routes, right? One route is for you to apply through a consulate abroad, meaning you can apply for a visa, right? Technically, visas are not available in Brazil. So if you apply for a visa, it means you are applying abroad. If you are in the United States, you're going to go through one of the Brazilian consulates in the United States. If you are applying, I don't know, just an example, in the United Arab Emirates, then you're going to go through an embassy, the Brazilian embassy in Abu Dhabi. Even though it's called the embassy performs as a consulate, so there is a department within the embassy that has consular services, right? So even though you are interacting with an embassy, it's almost like you were interacting with a consulate, and you're gonna always apply for a visa. And when you are applying to a consulate, the consulates, they have discretion on how to require those documents and how to enforce. So what I'm trying to say here is like when you apply to a consulate, we don't have much saying on how they work because there is a broad range of interpretations of the different Brazilian consulates. Now, going to your point, if you are applying in Brazil, right? In Brazil, then we have a better control of the process because then there is a single body who's reviewing the applications, and therefore there is no much variation in terms of how they are going to interpret the requirements. This said, there's still two different approaches for application. One application is going to be like self-applicants, which we don't support here at the firm because we are unable to tell exactly how the immigration is going to review. And there is another one which is done through our firm. When we apply on behalf of an applicant, the first document that goes along with the application is the letter of representation, so the Brazilian immigration knows that there is a law firm representing the applicant, and we sign an affidavit saying that whatever you are presenting through us is legit. So this operates almost like a certain level of legalization. I'm not saying that if you apply through us, you're not going to need the apostilles, but what I'm saying is like usually whenever people are applying through us, the Brazilian immigration will give a certain consideration because there are lawyers signing, right? Like Brazilian lawyers signing on behalf of the applicant saying that the documentation is legit. So my concern is like whenever we have a self-applicant, there could be a slightly different type of request from the immigration for additional legalization, right? So what I'm gonna tell you as an answer to your question is going to be based on our representation of a client and not necessarily the same if you are applying as a self-applicant, right? So this said, when you're applying to a law firm, it could be ours or any other law firm, usually it works like this. For the birth certificate, you're going to need a sworn translation, okay, because that's a pretty important document from the immigration perspective. It's almost like a passport, right? Like you can't just show up with a regular translation. You need to have a sworn translation. But for pretty much everything else, again, when we are applying on behalf of our clients, we're going to use a standard translation, right? It's not like Google Translation. It's not ChatGPT translation. It's not any type of AI. It is actually like, a company, a partner company that we send our clients' documents to. They do the translation for those documents. They send it back to us, and then we use those documents, right? And there are no stamps, there are no affidavits. It's just like a plain translation done by professional translators, all right? So, short answer, if applying through a firm, the way the immigration is going to require the translations to be done, birth certificate, it must be a sworn translation. Everything else, a regular professional translation would work. All right, Gary, I hope that helps. Márcia, obrigado por tudo. Obrigado você, Márcia, por participar do nosso canal. Espero que você e o Todd show up for our next live streams. Live streams here are on Wednesdays, usually 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time, and on Sundays at 3:30 p.m. Rio de Janeiro time. All right, let's see what else we have over here. We have Sergi Darmal. Good afternoon, Miss Oliveira. Residency is a fantasy, not a plan yet, because we have two citizenships. The U.S. one with a name change not registered on my French birth certificate. I'm worried about this. All right, so I'm gonna interpret here, Serge, that you saying that the residency is more like a dream that you have, something you have like for the long term. You already have two citizenships, a U.S. one and then you have a French one because of course you were born in France, and then you're mentioning about like the name change. And yes, like for Brazilian immigration, name change, they may be a problem. Okay, and if you have a name change in the United States, right? Like usually you have the paperwork, right? Like I mean, I know that because I saw that happening so many times with our clients, right? They say, well, I was born in one country, I came to the U.S., and then I did a name change. Because when you naturalize, right, like when you get the citizenship in the United States, the U.S. Is going to give you an option to change your name. But I also recall that many applicants, they have the form for name change, they have the certificate of naturalization, right? But I think the main document is going to be the application for name change, because Serge, what the Brazilian immigration is expecting is like some type of document connecting your prior name to your current name, right? And sometimes people, they don't have something like that, and then we're gonna need to become creative when such circumstances happen. In Rio de Janeiro, we try to use an affidavit supported by the firm, right? Like we say, listen, we know through our experience with foreign documents, particularly in the US, that's how it works. And by the way, the applicant also has an affidavit, right? And then we provided this template with an affidavit. And in Rio de Janeiro, it's easier for the immigration to accept such documents. Other immigrations, not so much, right? Like so, in the northeast of Brazil, they are more resistant to accepting something like an affidavit. They want to see some type of court document. The same thing in São Paulo as well, right? So, interesting enough, like I mean, when we approve something like a digital nomad residency, or like the retirement residency, we do it through a single department of the immigration in Brazil. But after it's approved, you still need to attend an appointment with the Brazilian Federal Police, in which they're going to review your documents, right? And then that's when there is a slightly broader range of interpretations. Just like I told you, like Rio de Janeiro police, usually they are fine with an affidavit. If there is also a law firm, vouching for the name matter. São Paulo and the Northeast, not so much, right? And we had cases of clients like in the United States, when they don't have the paperwork supporting the name change, to apply for a name change authorization from a court in the United States. So they would pay, I don't know, like an attorney $700, $1,000, from $700 to $1,000 for an attorney to apply through a court for an authorization of name change. And in this petition, the person would say, and by the way, I already changed my name, but now I need something official, supporting the name change. That's why I'm filing. And the judge is going to look at it and say, what a kind of weird thing. The guy changed their name already, and now they want to have a document authorizing. But I don't care. Like, I mean, I see that they changed it. If they need something to support the name change, here it is. And then the judge usually will sign, and you're going to have a court order, which for Brazilian immigration, that is going to be accepted in our experience in any Brazilian Federal Police. It doesn't matter if in the Northeast, São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and other places. All right, Serge. So I hope that helps a bit. Cherie is asking a follow-up question. After securing permanent residency through stable union, it takes 1 year to naturalize as a Brazilian citizen, right? Also, does being Brazilian citizen allow us to access fast-track naturalization opportunities in Europe? So, Cherie, let's tackle the first one, and that's correct. Like after you have permanent residency in Brazil through stable union, again, because from the Constitution point of view, nowadays stable union is the same as a marriage, and therefore, yes, after you've been in Brazil as a permanent resident, you're gonna be able to apply for the Brazilian citizenship 1 year after staying in Brazil as a permanent resident, right? Don't forget, you need to be, speaking, writing, and understanding like an advanced level of Portuguese, but that's absolutely right. And then you're asking if, as a Brazilian citizen, if you're going to get fast track naturalization opportunities in Europe. Yes, exactly the case, Shari. So I'm going to give an example. Spain, right? Like Spain, the timeline usually, right? Like for someone from India or other countries, for such a person to secure citizenship in Spain is going to be 10 years. Okay, it's going to be 10 years. But for Brazilians, this timeline is going to be substantially reduced. And I don't recall if it is like 2 years or 5 years, right? Like I don't recall from the top of my head if it is 2 to 5 years, but it is dramatically, right? Because if you're not, if you're not like from a like qualifying country, like Spain does like this. Listen, if you're from those countries, or if you are coming from a country in which either Portuguese or Spanish is spoken, you're gonna need to, be in Spain for 10 years in order to apply for the citizenship. But if you're from those countries, then I'm gonna give you a really substantial break. And Brazil is one of the countries in which Spain is gonna, afford this faster track. Okay, like I mean, in Portugal, there are also many benefits for you to apply, for either permanent residency or citizenship as a Brazilian. As Brazilians, we have a lot of, kind of exclusive benefits in Portugal because of, of course, like as you probably know, Brazil was colonized by Portugal, and therefore there is like a closer relationship, and there is like reciprocity, right? Like if Portuguese people come to Brazil, they also have a very a fast track for them to secure residency, and therefore there is such reciprocity between Brazil and Portugal. Very interesting question, Shari. That was the first time I hear that question. All right, Moses. Moses is asking if I buy 28 square meter studio right next to the Moema subway station and also in front of the Ibirapuera Mall, do you think this property could have a high or low occupancy rate, because there are many of these in São Paulo? Listen, Moema is a top neighborhood, Moses, right? Like I mean, you are, I would say, starting with the right foot, okay? Because Moema is one of the top neighborhoods in Brazil. I did work in Moema for probably 6 or 7 years. Like in my early 20s, I was a consultant, like an IT consultant, and I used to work like in Moema, and it is such an amazing neighborhood. But I'm not just talking that it is an amazing neighborhood because of my memory of my work there. I'm just saying like Moema is recognized like across the board as a top neighborhood in Brazil. This said, and I think you even addressed that, Moses. Like I mean, there is a lot of construction activity in São Paulo, and they don't stop building, like new developments in all neighborhoods, right? It's not just Moema, it's not just like São Paulo downtown, it's everywhere, right? Like I mean, so there is this question, Shari, of how much the São Paulo market can absorb, can take of those new constructions. But being very specific, like about your question, like I mean, it's difficult to go wrong with Moema, right? Particularly if you have a property that is closer to the subway station, right? Like because one of the problems of Moema, right, my experience, like from I don't know 30 years ago, it was kind of difficult to get in and out of the neighborhood because there was no subway, right? But nowadays you have not only the subway, but you're also gonna have a bunch of bus lines. Like I mean, they have like a corridor, right? Like I mean, a special track for the buses connecting to downtown, connecting to other neighborhoods. And Moema traditionally, I don't know, there is just something that works very well for this neighborhood. Like there's so much conveniences. People who live in Moema, I mean, they're just different. Like they're very community oriented. So a really nice take. All right, Moses. I hope that helps. All right, Serge, a plan if this problem can be solved. Yeah, Serge, listen. If you work with us, right, on whatever track you want to pick, that's what we are here for, right? Like we're not just here for the standard cases, but we may also assist with this kind of challenge. The name change, it is a challenge, and I feel like we could be a good match for your needs. All right, Serge. All right. Let me ask you if you would like to give us a like. As I like to tell, the likes, they are helpful to us, of course, because if you like our content is going to show up out there, and it's also going to be helpful for other people just like you, who are searching for this content. And unless you like our content, Google doesn't know if the content is helpful or not. So if our content is being helpful to you, please go ahead and like our live stream. I really appreciate that. All right, Ronnie, do you think Brazil will maintain the same requirements for housing cost for the golden visa for the next few years? That's a good question, Ronnie. So there are like two main factors that I see impacting on the golden visa requirement. The first one is like inflation, right? So like for those of you who do not know, like I mean, you can secure permanent residency in the country when you buy a property in most of the country for at least 1 million reais, and this amount has been the same since 2018, right? Like, so we are in 2025, we're talking about almost 7 years. And if you apply a correction, if you updated 1 million reais from 2018 based on the inflation index, this should be about 2 million reais. Okay, it's actually 1.9 million reais, but just for simplicity, let's say it should be 2 million reais. So that's the factor, right? Like I mean, driving an expectation of the amount being updated. Now, a possible reasoning is kind of the opposite, right? Like at the beginning, not a lot of people would have the 1 million reais to apply, so the number of applicants was not that great. And nowadays, it means that the 1 million reais is kind of half of what it was 7 years ago, and maybe there is a large number of people applying just because the amount is half, like in practical terms, right? Again, the amount remains the same, but in terms of purchase power, we're talking about half of what it was like 7 years ago. So this is going to be the type of reasoning that the Brazilian government is going to be making eventually. All right, should I increase because then I'm gonna get more money coming into the country, or should I actually keep the same amount because there is already a large number of people applying? Okay, and so it's difficult for the Brazilian government to kind of anticipate, right? Like I just wish ChatGPT was good enough for the Brazilian government to say, well, all right, what is the perfect number that I should be asking to maximize the amount of money being sent to Brazil. But there is no such a thing, of course, and therefore the Brazilian government needs to kind of make like a type of assessment, or see like over time how it is the behavior. Another thing that should be factored into this analysis is like at the beginning of Golden Visa, nobody knew about it, right? Like I mean, there was no YouTube videos, like our YouTube videos, they were not out there, and now there are a bunch of YouTube videos, not only ours but from many other content creators, right? So how can the Brazilian government tell? So this is like the two main factors, Ronnie, that should be considered when trying to answer this question. Now, the only thing I can tell you is, like, as of today, the amounts remain what they are, and usually the Brazilian government has a tradition of giving people a heads up when they are gonna change the amount, right? So my expectation, my hope is that once they say, well, we're gonna increase, maybe not to 2 million reais, but 1.5 million reais, is that they're gonna say, you know what, we're gonna change at the beginning of 2026, right? So they would give people like a time window for them to go ahead and do what they have not done so far, if that makes sense, Ronnie. I hope that was helpful. Sarah Lily, welcome, Sarah. Thank you for going live. Thank you for showing up, Sarah. For digital nomads, can foreigners apply in country for that? I've also heard that are additional letters needed to prove current employment beyond contracts. Your thoughts? Yes, Sarah. So you can apply for the digital nomad in country, okay? And that's actually what we do here at the firm. We do pretty much every single day. We have, literally hundreds of clients for the digital nomad. And when you apply in the country, right, it's not called a visa, it's going to be called a residency. From a technical perspective, if you apply outside of Brazil, it's a visa. If you apply in country, like you're saying, it's going to be a residency. And that's what we do, okay? So yes, we do it every day. That can be done. That's pretty standard, all right? And in terms of additional letters, I'm going to explain what happens, right? Like, the Brazilian immigration has certain requirements for you to qualify for the digital nomad, either visa or residency, right? And those specific requirements, they're not realistic in terms of U.S. contracts, right? Like, U.S. contracts, they just don't work like the Brazilian immigration think they work. Right, you got to understand the people in the Brazilian immigration, like, they don't have, even like people at the U.S. consulate, they don't have that much experience with like the U.S. World, right? Like, they think things work just kind of like they work in Brazil, and they do not. So whenever the Brazilian immigration says, I want a contract like this, we know that 99% of the U.S. contracts, they don't meet those requirements. So even if you have a work contract in the United States, most probably than not, you're going to need a letter of verification addressing those requirements that are not met by your work contract, okay? And because of that, and because you also need to provide a translation for the work contract, what we are doing nowadays, we are just telling our clients, listen, forget about your work contract. You're going to use our letter of verification, and then we have a template in which we address every single requirement from the Brazilian immigration when it comes to the letter of the work. And therefore, instead of presenting a 30-page document that's not going to be compliant anyhow, you're going to have a single document, potentially with 1 or 2 pages, that's going to be fully compliant. So in addition to making the life of the immigration analyst easier, you're going to be saving yourself money, because again, you're not going to need to translate a 30-page document that could easily cost a few $100s in terms of translation. A letter with 1 or 2 pages, on the other hand, will rarely cost you more than $20 to have it translated. And therefore, that's our strategy nowadays, Sarah. I hope that was helpful. Gary, after applying for residency in Brazil, how long do you have to collect your things from them, collect your things from the former country to bring to Brazil? So are you saying, like, to send your stuff through a container, Gary? Our firm, and I understand, right? Like, you probably have 10 arguments for why you should bring your stuff to Brazil, but usually our recommendation is that you don't, right? Unless we are talking about family pictures, I don't know, your diplomas, stuff that is deeply personal to you, okay? but usually to bring stuff to Brazil is very expensive. Even if you don't pay the crazy 100% import tax, right? So when you become a resident in Brazil, usually you can apply and try to avoid the 100% tax on Brazilian imports. Still, when you factor in like the cost of the container, the cost of the broker, usually things are not going to be released on time. Sometimes I hear, right, like that's not me saying, right, I don't want to get in trouble, but I hear that sometimes you may need to pay bribes to have your container released. Just things that we hear, of course, right? I don't think all this trouble it's worth the effort to bring things to Brazil. And I did bring a container. It was probably in 2010, 2011. It was a nightmare. And listen, I'm talking as a lawyer with connections in the import business and so on. Like, I mean, I don't know. I spent probably it was probably, I don't know, $15,000, and it wasn't, and the trouble, right, like of following up and the paperwork, and like people would bring this container and there was like stuff broken, like the immigration, not the immigration, like the customs personnel at the port. They had like messed up with part of the goods in there. It was a bad experience, right? And we have here at the firm listened to from other clients the same, right? Now we also have some clients, it's not like the majority, but some clients who are extremely wealthy, and they say, listen, I couldn't care less about the cost. I want to bring all my stuff from the United States because I needed this two-door fridge from LG, which like has like the glasses on the right door, and you knock on the door and you can see the content. It has a computer, and those things they don't exist in Brazil. So like the really wealthy share of our clients, they say I don't care, and that's a different take, right? Because if price is not an issue, then yes, you can bring whatever you want to Brazil. All right. So these are the two perspectives, Gary. One more practical, and another one that's more like a wish-based approach. And there you go. Moses is asking, someone got residency through investment and after a year gave birth and decided to sell the property after a year. Do you think he will still keep the residency because of the child? Yes, Moses, absolutely. The childbirth is one of the tracks in Brazil for you to secure residency. And if you have a child, like the whole residency through, golden visa / property investment, it doesn't make much sense because, the child route is much more, is much faster, and you don't need to keep the property, right? Like, so yes, if you have a child, forget about the golden visa, and just you're gonna secure the permanent residency right away. And by the way, this route also gives you access to the fast track, meaning that in a single year of permanent residency in Brazil, you could even apply for the citizenship. All right, Moses, there you go. All right, so let me tell you, we are a few minutes from ending today's live stream. I want to thank you for those of you who gave us your like. If you haven't liked our live stream so far, please do us a favor and do so. This helps with our work here on a Sunday, and it also helps other people just like you to find our content. So I really appreciate if you could go ahead and like our live stream. And if you haven't had a chance to ask for a content of your interest to be discussed, remember, we're going to be together again on Wednesday. On Wednesday, the time is a little bit different. Instead of 3:30 Rio de Janeiro time, on Wednesdays we meet at 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. You just do the conversion if you're not in Brazil, so you know exactly at which time the live stream is going to work. Remember, the schedule is already on YouTube, so if you go to our YouTube page on the live content, you're going to see that there is a kind of scheduling for Wednesday, and if you click on it, you're going to see a notify me. And this notify me is going to let you know when we are starting. And so in addition to maybe having this is in your calendar, you can also have a notification coming from YouTube, making sure you're not going to miss our live stream. All right. Okay, so Sarah Little, that was super helpful. Thank you. Thank you for showing up, Sarah. I have one other question. Is there an expiration for the apostille, birth certificate, state documents, right? So that's going to be our first question from today. And Sarah, there is no expiration. Like, I mean, apostille documents, they don't expire per se. What happens is like the Brazilian immigration may have a certain expectation in terms of timeline. For instance, for the background check, there is a requirement that the background check is not older than 90 days. So even though the apostille on it is never going to expire, if your underlying documents are older than 90 days, the Brazilian immigration is going to say, well, this doesn't help, right? I'm not going to accept. Birth certificate. Birth certificate is one that we've seen, documents apostilled like 5 years ago to be perfectly accepted by the Brazilian immigration. And the reason behind that is because, like the underlying information in your birth certificate is not going to change, right? Like the Brazilian immigration is concerned about your parents' names, about the date in which you were born. And naturally, those things are not going to change if the document was issued 5 years ago. And therefore, the Brazilian immigration is not going to have any issue accepting a birth certificate that was apostilled 5 years ago. Okay, for other documents, what I think is going to be driving a timeline of acceptance is going to be how reasonable they are answering the questions that the Brazilian immigration has about you. So, for instance, Sarah, if you're applying for the digital nomad, the digital nomad means that the Brazilian immigration wants to know if you're working. Okay, so if you're presenting, the letter of employment, or like the letter of verification, and this thing is like from 1 year ago, like, I mean, it doesn't make much sense for the Brazilian immigration to be accepting this document. And then the problem is not going to be the underlying. The problem is not going to be the apostille itself. It's going to be the underlying document, right? Like saying that you are working, but the thing was said 1 year ago, right? And the Brazilian immigration wants to know if you're working now, not 1 year ago. And we kind of, handle those things like from a common sense perspective. Of course, a common sense as immigration professionals, right? Like that's not something that you should know, but we should know, and we kind of know from experience with the process. All right, and the only thing we see in writing from the Brazilian immigration is regarding the background check, the criminal records. This one, they specifically say, listen, if it's over 90 days, no good. Okay, everything else they don't have like this such timeline, and we kind of work on a case by case basis. Good to see you over here, Sarah. Good to see you. And good to see a lot of other people, that showed up today for the first time. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope you show up on Wednesday, and I hope you guys have a